Hello there. It's time for another episode of Orange Truth Archetype. And on this episode, I'll be finishing up the Friends TV show. Specifically on this episode, I'll be looking at the character Joey Tribianni. I'll analyze his character traits and personality, and based entirely on my more or less completely unqualified opinion, assigning him his specific archetype. But before we begin, I'd just like to point something out, that this analysis does not include anything from the spin-off series Joey, in which that same character has his own show. This is going to focus entirely on when he's in the Friends TV show. So, without further ado, let's get started. And to begin with, we have the Ruler. Now, despite Joey's spontaneity and impulsiveness, he does actually have a few rules that he tries to live by. However, I think we can agree that his rules are not entirely set in stone. There have been multiple references throughout the show that Joey has cheated on many of his past girlfriends. However, when he thought of one of his friends for cheating, he thought this was absolutely not okay. And when he found out his dad was having an affair, he made him confess to his mom. And despite him being somewhat progressive at times...
Oh, and don't worry, I'm totally okay with the gay thing.
He does value a lot of traditional social norms. He proposes to both Rachel and Phoebe when he thought they were pregnant, and when his sister got knocked up, he tried to force her to marry the guy who did it. So he seems pretty uncensored when it comes to the rules. But he is pretty self-confident and has standards. Overall though, I think with Joey's level of impulsivity, spontaneity, and enjoyment for making things up as he goes along, I don't think the Ruler is a very good fit for him, so let's move on. But this next one, I think is a really good fit for Joey, and it's the Jester archetype. Joey's been tickling our funny bones since season 1, and has the honor of being the first one in the series to crack a joke.
Come on, you're going out with the guy. There's got to be something wrong with him.
And like the Jester, he brings a level of spontaneity and compulsiveness that is always comical. Plus, he's not one to plan for the future, or think of the consequences. After all, when he got his big break on Days of Our Lives, he went and spent all the money and eventually had to move back in with Chandler. And because he wasn't thinking ahead, it eventually led him to getting kicked off the show. So while not a planner, he is excellent at making things up as he goes along, and as an actor, loves being in the spotlight. Not to mention, he is great at looking at different points of view. One thing that is iconic is that even though he was in love with Rachel, he eventually broke it off with her because he knew Ross was still in love with her. He didn't want to break up the family and looked at it from Ross's point of view. He showed a lot of empathy in this case, and while he is pretty oblivious 9 times out of 10, he has a certain social wisdom about him. He's confident in himself, and while he does desire to become a famous actor, I wouldn't say it's a burning, passionate desire, and he's pretty content with smelling the flowers along the way. For these reasons, I think that the Jester is going to be a hard archetype to beat. Next on the list is the Everyman. Now, I think the Everyman could be another pretty good fit for Joey. He grew up with 7 sisters, so he is used to being around lots of close people. Not only is he a traditionalist, but I would say he has a strong desire to be a part of the mainstream. He likes being not only popular, but also useful. He likes helping out, and I think he knows he's a person that all the friends like having around at one point or another, and he values them in return, even going so far as to choose them over his romantic relationships. Plus, later on in the series, he kinda loses his desire to become famous, believing that he's already become a pretty great actor, and becomes okay with making a less famous living. However, he does value status, and wants friends that aren't just surface level. And while he does closely relate to his friends, he doesn't have a traditional us versus them complex. Any fault that befalls upon him, he usually takes responsibility for himself, and doesn't blame the outside world. Plus, the Everyman isn't very mature, and I think we see a lot of this in Joey.
Come on, man, really? How old?
Young. You're a man-child.
So overall, I think this is another really good contender, but let's see what else there is. And next on the list is the Caregiver. Now we know that Joey is more of a child than a parent, and he doesn't really have any kids of his own, but despite not having any children, and not being very responsible, Joey does show some caregiver qualities. After all, he and Chandler both raised the chick and the duck together, often acting like a married couple in the process. Not to mention, he does give a lot of advice throughout the series. He's always there with welcome arms and knows how to make their friends feel better when they're down. Then again, he also relies on a lot of his friends, such as relying on Chandler for financial support and Monica for food. So while he doesn't really support his friends in the traditional parent-child kind of way, he does support them by being helpful and being really involved in their lives. So he's got some qualities at the very least. And moving right on down the list, we have the hero archetype. And not to sound repetitive, but I think this could be another strong contender for Joey's personality. Joey's the kind of guy that loves to come to the rescue like the stereotypical hero does. He's the strong one out of the friends, and often shows it. In one episode, Chandler and Ross are getting bullied, and Joey offers to come in and get them to back off. He's also pretty optimistic, relaxed, and believes everything is going to be okay. He's also known for acting first and thinking, well, eventually. And while his approach is pretty direct at times, he's not afraid to take an alternative route to solving his problems. I think sometimes he's afraid to hurt a person if he has a problem with them, so it's definitely another very strong contender for Joey's archetype. And let's keep the ball rolling with the revolutionary. This is the archetype that's more about making a big change and gathering followers. And as we've seen on the show, Joey's a bit of a traditionalist and doesn't really change. In the final season, where he and the friends eventually split up, it was Joey that probably had the hardest time dealing with it, not wanting his environment to change. In fact, this happens often when Rachel tends to move to Paris and Chandler moves out to live with Monica. And even though he doesn't want people to think he's stupid, he doesn't really care what people think of him, and doesn't have the desire to be respected or feared by others. Again, he also values traditional norms. He believes in an ideal world, and though he might be oblivious to how it works at times, he doesn't have the desire to change it, nor be in charge of its development. This shows that he doesn't want people to be like him, and is okay with the way things are, making this archetype not a very fitting one. And now we have the Outlaw. Now, we've seen Joey as a bit of a bad boy before, but is he really? To me, Joey's kinda hard on the outside at first, but soft on the inside. He can throw a lot of punches, but he can't really take that many. He's also not set on rebelling against authority, but he is okay breaking the rules from time to time, especially if it comes to his friends. And while not very controllable, he is pretty easy to manipulate. But while Joey is occasionally free of mind, he's also free-minded. He's okay with being different and doesn't always need people's approval to be happy. Even if it means being violent, he's okay with doing what makes him happy, and what makes other people happy as well. He also values equality, justice, and vengeance like the Outlaw. Yes, he sometimes plays the bad boy in order to seem cool and attract women, but we really see him opening up his sensitive side as the series goes on. I also say that he and Phoebe have a strong connection because they both don't mind being different, and know how useful it can be. So, another possible contender at the very least. And next up is the Magician. So, Joey's not much of a magician, but he does have his moments. At the very least, he does have the same fear of not being enough, whether it's intellectually or in his acting career. He knows he's not book smart, nor that intelligent, but he tries. He was even convinced by a salesman to buy an encyclopedia because he wanted to be on the intellectual level of the rest of his friends and be able to keep up with their conversations. And when in his element, he's pretty skilled at the art of seduction. He makes a good sidekick and supports the rest of his friends in their endeavors. While he doesn't go through much of a transformation throughout the series, he's thoughtful, wise, and at the very least, reflective. And he does take pride in who he is.
'Cause I'm a Tribianni. And this is what we do. I mean, we may not be great thinkers or world leaders. We don't read a lot or run very fast, but damn it, we can eat!
He's never one to back down from a challenge and enjoys overcoming obstacles, especially those that are food-related. Speaking of transformation, the next archetype we have is the Sage archetype. Now, as we've said earlier, Joey actually does have some wise old man moments at times. Despite his lack of book smarts, Joey does offer a lot of social and relationship advice. Actually, whenever in any kind of moral dilemma, Joey's not afraid to offer his 2 cents. And even though his friends don't always take him seriously, Joey has wiggled his way into being in pretty much superior position at times. Ironically, he's officiated both Chandler and Monica's wedding, as well as Phoebe and Mike's. And even though, again, he dated Rachel, he indirectly/accidentally pushed her back towards Ross, which who knows, may have been what he wanted all along.
Not just a hat rack, my friend.
He's a little cocky at times when it comes to women, knowing he's the one with all the experience. In this way, he feels superior to Chandler and Ross, which puts him in quite a respectable position. So I gotta say, if Joey is this age, it's probably on accident, but that doesn't make it any less true. Moving on down the list is the innocent archetype. Now, Joey does have the reputation of being a womanizer, but he also is kind of known for being a man-child. After all, Phoebe had to teach him how to lie. Much of what makes Joey funny is that compared to most of the other friends, he's pretty naive, gullible, and somewhat oblivious. He's the fool that makes us laugh, but he also has a sensitive side. He thinks with his heart, uses his emotions, and can get kind of upset every now and then. Yes, he may see most women as objects.
Isn't this a woman's hat? Dude, stop talking crazy and make us some tea.
But he still believes in the idea of true love. He gets giddy and happy when he sees other people happy, and is a true good friend.
She's my friend and she needed help. If I had to, I'd pee on any one of you.
Not to mention, the innocent is the character that does not change at all, and while every other friend grows a lot throughout the show, Joey kinda stays the same comedic bachelor that he started out as. Yes, he does have some flaws.
If you're gonna do something wrong, do it right.
But he still seems pretty pure of heart and quick to forgive. I can say at the very least he's probably the most innocent one out of the entire group, despite his promiscuous nature.
How you doing? 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 Hey, how you doing?
And now we have the creator archetype. The creator is usually some kind of inventor or scientist or artist, and Joey's acting is his art. While he doesn't ever actually create anything, or even writes any of his own plays, he is a bit of an idea man. He comes up with different and odd concepts that, while might seem ridiculous at first, actually turn out to be pretty useful. Ideas just seem to pop into his head, and while usually something food or sex related, does hint at the fact that Joey might actually be a foolish savant. One scene that I always thought was funny, or that shows Joey's actual intelligence, was when they got locked outside the taxi, and Joey was the one that thought of using the wire from one of the girls' bras in order to get into the car. So I gotta say, this really shows Joey's direction that while usually something sex-related, it can actually be pretty useful. So while he doesn't really take claim to making anything on his own, he does add to what is already there. He makes a connection from himself to his acting gigs. This is why he loves bringing his friends along to all of his performances, and gets so upset when Chandler accidentally falls asleep during one. So even though he isn't at the top of where the creator usually is, his thoughts are original and different. So at the very least we can entertain the idea that the creator might actually be a good fit for him. And last but certainly not least, the explorer archetype. Now, Joey has been all over the map, especially with life in general. Not only has he slept with a vast variety of women, but he has also had a number of odd jobs. From selling Christmas trees and men's cologne to working at Central Perk. He's also been hired by Monica, Chandler, and Ross at some point or another. And even within his own acting career, he's done it all. From acting as a porno expert to Dr. Drake Rumore on Days of Our Lives. And I gotta give him props for his debut in Freud.
All you want is a ding-dong.
Plus, even though he knows the general idea of what he wants, he doesn't really have much of a preference. So even though he isn't the scholarly type, he is ready for an adventure at a moment's notice. He's a free spirit that's always there for his friends, making this archetype a likely one indeed. Well, it's time for the decision. And I gotta say, this surprised even me. And I'm the one that makes the decision. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if I got a lot of disagreement on this, but after analyzing his character in depth, I gotta say that based entirely on my more or less completely unqualified opinion, Joey Tribianni is the Jester archetype. Keep in mind that the Jester is both smart and the fool, and at the very least, Joey's different. In fact, his character was iconic enough to get his own spin-off series for at least 2 seasons. Plus, he's on the extreme ends of being both very socially smart and intellectually ignorant. But he excels at looking at things differently, and really fits the Jester archetype to a T. Joey makes us laugh without trying to be funny. He's just naturally comical. But hey, if you disagree, just comment down below and explain why, and be sure to like and subscribe. Also, be on the lookout for my other videos, and since this is the last one of the Friends series, I'll probably be on the lookout for another show to analyze, so be sure to comment down below what you'd like me to do. Thank you all for watching, and remember, stay concentrated.